Welcome to From Tech Developer to Real Estate Developer. Here you'll go from making ends meet behind a keyboard to living in true freedom by using real estate well. Never having to work a full-time job, report to a manager, or give your adult life to a corporation that probably doesn't care about you. We will give you everything you need for your journey: techniques, principles, real-world experience, and application, filtered through 5 key power principles from my book, People Power, Other People's Money, How to Win, Enjoy, and Reserve. Get ready to take notes. Let's jump into From Tech Developer to Real Estate Developer. Welcome to From Tech Developer to Real Estate Developer. I have a special guest here today, Shawn DiMartile. This is a guy I listened to many times on his it used to be, correct me if I'm wrong, it used to be called Multifamily Takeoff, right?
That's right. Yeah. It used to be the multifamily takeoff. We changed it to the real estate takeoff to kind of give it a broader audience.
Yeah. So this is cool.
So you're not wrong.
Special. We basically have our first celebrity on this podcast.
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah. This is
Thank
awesome.
you for your kind words.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us here today. So to introduce him, Shawn DiMartile operates over 300 rental units, is the host of the Real Estate Takeoff podcast, and co-founder of Takeoff Capital. The Real Estate Takeoff podcast is at over 200,000 downloads to this day, by the way. Shawn is also a U.S. Navy veteran. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Worked as an air traffic controller. For his first deal, Shawn liquidated his 401k to partner up on a 32-unit apartment complex in a different state. And while there were many lessons learned and headaches in that property, it ended up being a 3x return and ignited a profound passion for real estate. With his initial investment tripling, Shawn expanded his business, completing 2 large syndications and growing his portfolio to 300 multifamily units, a 10-key hotel, and 4 Airbnbs. So this guy is just a little bit busy.
Yeah, right.
Tiny bit. So
yeah, you could say that.
Would you like to introduce yourself too, like a quick 75-second one?
Yeah, sure. So, you covered all the main points there. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky. I'll add that. I currently live in San Diego, California. I eat, sleep, and breathe real estate. Was able to quit the W-2 job in March of last year to fully dedicate myself to real estate now. So yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Shawn_DiMartile, things like that, because you can learn a lot from me as I put stuff out every day and document my journey.
Yeah, this guy is a water hose of information. So definitely follow him. And we'll also get your full information on what you're doing, what you're up to, and how you can partner with people towards the end too. Or
Sweet.
Even whenever you want to mention it too. What sort of deals are you working on nowadays, by the way?
So nowadays we're focusing on what's called the bonus ADU program here in San Diego. Long story short, so I'm sure a lot of East Coast people aren't familiar with what that is, but accessory dwelling units have become a big thing on the West Coast, specifically in California. Mostly due to the fact that cities like San Diego don't have any room to grow. All of the vacant land has been built on. Mm-hmm. And we're also constrained by the ocean to the west, Mexico to the south, mountains to the east, and a military base to the north. So basically, they're increasing density. And you can take certain lots and that have a single family on them and actually put apartment complexes. And so we're focusing on that now because we can achieve really good returns. It's a niche that isn't as competitive as traditional multifamily. And it gives us a lot of ways to just essentially max out the value of a lot. And so, yeah, we're focusing on that very heavily now. And we'll probably be doing so for the next couple of years.
Sweet. That's a special niche there. That's awesome. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and jump into the main meat of it, going through the 5 key power principles from my book. So there's people power, other people's money or resources, winning, enjoying, and reserve. So people power. So was there somebody critical to the turning point of you saying, I'm going to put it all on the line, liquidate my 401k?
I think that there wasn't necessarily somebody that was critical for that part, because that part kind of, the thought process to reaching the point where I wanted to liquidate my 401k was a longer road that I came across myself. But I will say, if I were to pick a person that was really pivotal in my growth, it would be my mentor, Tony Azar. I got that mentor after that 32 unit. But without that mentor, I wouldn't have been able to syndicate those 2 large multifamily properties right after that. So I would say my mentor is definitely that person that was the catalyst.
Gotcha. And how did that relationship come to be?
That came to be from my podcast. That was one of the many things that my podcast has done for me. But we actually interviewed his brother on our podcast, and we're telling him about how, we've been looking for a mentor, but all of the mentorship programs that we found that, have courses and modules, etc., didn't seem like a good fit for us because you weren't getting enough one-on-one with the mentor. And after telling that to his brother, he said, you know what, I'm going to go talk to Tony and see if maybe, we'd be interested in being your guys' mentor, because they don't have a program. It would just be a one-on-one thing. So
Wow.
long story short, after that conversation, it slowly evolved into an actual mentorship.
Check that out. So you just put it
Yeah,
out there and got an answer. That's
exactly.
okay. I noticed on your website too, you do speaking engagements too. Is that your main way of networking?
I would say it's one of the many ways of networking. So like the speaking engagements are typically real estate meetups, for example. So we recently did a couple real estate meetups where we spoke and answered questions as a panel, things like that. But I love going to those. If I get a chance to speak at them, even better. But those are just a great place to meet, network with all sorts of people, whether it's lenders that you'll meet, other investors that might want to partner with you. I've made so many connections that branched out into more and more connections. I've met people at meetups that introduced me to an investor that they knew of that ended up investing with me. So there's just so many reasons why I think it's a great idea to network at those.
That's awesome. And if you're a beginner, how do you recommend somebody to get the most return on investment from an event like that?
In my opinion, the best return on investment you can get if you're new is to start your own meetup. Start your own meetup, post it on Bigger Pockets, post it on the Meetup app, etc. And the reason for that is that everybody wants to meet whoever is throwing the event. So when you start out, because I've had my own real estate meetups as well, when you start out, like, yeah, you won't have that many people showing up, but over time you will. So you can just, ask a restaurant that has an outdoor area, if you can host there, etc. Tell them you're going to bring them business and people will be ordering drinks. And most of them will say yes. And then over time, you're going to be building that rapport with people. People will get to know you more, and you're just going to set yourself up for making more connections if you are the one hosting. So that's what I recommend to people.
Yeah, that's a good tip. There's a event I did. It was 5 events this year that I did here in Buckhead, Atlanta. And what was surprising was I actually got more meetings when the meetings were smaller quantities of people. It wasn't like the 80 plus. It was when it was like 30 or less, because it was more time for intimacy, more conversation.
Yeah.
And that was really surprising. So if you are getting a small quantity of people, just have a different paradigm on that. Like, that's just more focused time with somebody.
Agreed. I completely agree. And I think you can't go wrong going to those things. Like it's either, typically too with these meetups, it's like what? Usually they're going to be in the evening on a weekday. And what else are you going to be doing? You might be at home watching Netflix. Like the return on investment, I think, is infinite to go to things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of return on investment, we naturally could go into other people's money or resources. So there's people that could offer resources that are worth more than money, right? So what are some tips you have on that?
So as far as, this kind of ties into the networking as well. And I'll even give some examples. Other people, everybody has their different expertise, right? And whenever I've done deals, and especially bigger projects, I've always tried to find people that complement my skills or that can fill certain skill gaps. So a great example is a lot of the projects we're doing in San Diego right now involve ground up development of apartments, or we're building brand new apartments right now. Now I have a lot of experience with multifamily, but I don't have a lot of experience with ground up construction. That is a lot more complicated than value add multifamily, right? So I know of a gentleman that I met at my local real estate meetup and have become good friends with that is a project manager for commercial real estate. He's done over $100 million in construction and even built the building I'm living in now. So what we did is offered him a percentage of our general partnership and said, hey, man, you come in for these deals. You monitor the budget and everything involving construction, because that's the only part that I don't have a ton of experience with. And so that's how he became our partners on these deals. So I think that a good point to make here if you're listening to this, is if there are areas that you have absolutely almost zero knowledge in, bringing somebody in not only will reduce that risk substantially, but you'll be able to learn from that person. So I think that networking, finding people that complement your skills, and doing deals with them is one of the ways you can fast track yourself to success.
Indeed. You mentioned you know the owner of the building you live in. Have you kind of picked his brain too along your path?
No, not the owner of the building, one of the guys that built it.
Oh, the
So
built it. Okay.
yeah, so my buddy James Heinzman, he was a project manager on this property. So, he's built high rises. He's been on the team of constructing a lot of projects that are even bigger than the ones that we're doing. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's a great relationship to have, even when it comes to their relationships, the government and permits and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And knowledge of all of that stuff so that you don't make mistakes. Yes.
Yeah. The reason I brought that up too was that could be a kind of little gem that people don't think about. Like the guy that owns this place, this office building, I actually had a sit down with him the other day. I was like, whoa, this guy's been in the business since like 1970. And he just dropped some gems on how he bought a building in Buckhead for like 400 grand back then, or a set of buildings actually. And that's like the nicest part of town now. And he didn't know how he was gonna buy it. He went to a bank, actually numerous banks, and basically did a whole rigmarole to work it out. So sometimes you just gotta figure out the consequences later. It was actually even an auction, and he didn't even have cash to do it. He figured out how to get cash out of a bank to fund it essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different ways to get creative advice, and also maybe even do a deal with him at some point. Maybe even want to buy this building too, and it's older, and he's getting up there in age, so he may want to let it go at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. You can always learn from people like that. And that's actually the best way to get ahead in real estate, matter of fact. I mean, every single thing that I've done in real estate, I didn't create it. I didn't develop it. The blueprint's already there. I just followed people that went before me and learned from them. That's the fastest way to get ahead.
Yes, indeed. So speaking of blueprints, you kind of also made a little bit of your own on that first deal. Tell us a little bit about the lessons learned and kind of advice you have for people on that.
So yeah, my first deal was a 32 unit in Greenwood, Indiana, which is about 15-20 minutes south of Indianapolis. It was a great acquisition because it was a great neighborhood. The property was basically the ugliest property in one of the nicer neighborhoods.
Oh, that's
it met all of our metrics. Was perfect for what we were looking for. Now, problems arose due to our lack of experience on that first project. We could have done a more thorough inspection to uncover a lot of the issues that we were going to face. With that project, we actually we were bleeding money from air conditioners going out during the summertime that we weren't anticipating. I think we had 1 or 2 air conditioners go out like every month in the first year of ownership. There was a lot of piping issues, cast iron pipes that were corroded, and they weren't draining properly. We had a collapsed clay piping underneath the parking lot in the back. There was a lot of big issues that ended up costing us $10,000-$20,000 we weren't anticipating. So one of the biggest learning lessons I have from that I would tell everybody listening to this is to do the most thorough inspection that you possibly can. If you're buying a building, scope out all of those sewer lines. It's going to cost you more money, maybe even a couple $1,000 more to get those cameras down into those sewer lines. But it's extremely important because that's one of the biggest expenses that always comes up with old buildings. Additionally, I always have my inspectors inspect every single HVAC, and I want them to give me their estimated remaining useful life on that. And I even create a spreadsheet with all of them and, look at the maintenance, see if it's been taken care of, all of that stuff, because those things will cost you $4,500 a pop to replace. So if you're not anticipating that, then that's going to hurt you. And then the final big piece of advice I got from that, well, there's more, but another huge piece to this is having way more contingency capital than you think. I typically go for 20 to 30% on top of the renovation budget. And that's just because every single property I've ever done and ever will do, things come up that you weren't expecting, and you need money to be able to handle that. The biggest thing that makes people real estate deals fail is not being able to cover your expenses. Usually it's the debt, you not being able to make your debt payments. That's how deals go south. And if you run out of money, then you're going to be on a path to failure. So I would highly stress to have a lot of extra money, contingency capital set aside to cover that kind of stuff.
Indeed. Plan for a buffer. When you mentioned the estimated useful life, I try not to piss off my wife too much because I want to expand my estimated useful life, instead of getting murdered. It's pretty useful.
Yeah. Same thing. And health-wise, I mean, shit.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Yeah, we all go through those moments of learning. And yeah, it does cost more. The last multifamily I got also had a drain issue. And I was like wishing upon a star, everything would be fine. The issue also was the inspector didn't do his job very well either. So I just went ahead and bought the property because the purchase price was so attractive, and I didn't have time to do another inspection. Nor did I'm not that motivated to, but yeah, it ended up costing like $5,000 to dig up 7 feet down, replace old lines. And for people that don't know, cast iron is basically from the early 1900s or mid 1900s metal.
Yeah, you'll see it a lot more in like properties from the 50s, 60s, and earlier.
So they're very prone to rust.
Exactly. So like, let's say you got a 1-inch pipe. Over time, the opening inside that pipe could get down to a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch. And if all kinds of stuff is being flushed down the drain, it gets stopped up in this metal corrosion rust on the inside. So they're just terrible pipes. I mean, they work well in the short term, but over the long term, 30, 40, 50 years, it's going to cause a lot of issues. So it's something that you definitely want to be aware of if you're going to be buying an older property.
Yeah. And tree roots too. If they're near them, they'll want to get water from them.
That's right.
They'll go right into the pipes. Trees are pretty strong.
Oh, yeah.
You want to introduce your doggy as he's passing by to the people?
Yeah. If you guys are watching the video, Bowie's behind me. That's he's my assistant back there. A miniature Australian Shepherd. Dad was away for 5 days in the mountains, so he's really excited to have me back in the office.
Yes, indeed. I'm sure he lost his mind when you came in the house.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we covered other people's money or resources. Winning. I like to redefine winning to also learning from headaches. So we kind of talked about that. But what does winning also mean to you? As abstract as that sounds.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think winning for me is really pretty simple. It's just, winning for me in life in general is just not having to stress about my properties or work in general. That's what I'm looking for. Now, winning for my business is always making sure that my investors are taken care of, because that's what drives my business. So I'm put a lot of effort into providing the best experience possible for my investors. But really, winning in life is not having to stress about work. I've had way too many stressful jobs in my life. I don't want to stress about my properties, and I want my family to be comfortable. Really, it's as simple as that. Like maintaining that, because like I've basically been able to achieve that. I just want to maintain that, keep my sight on that, and realize that that's all I need to be happy and win in life. The rest of it's just icing on the cake, man.
Indeed. I know you're enjoying that content, but I just wanted to personally invite you to the Commonwealth Affordable Housing Fund. If you want to passively earn while also building communities, doing philanthropy even, while getting quarterly distributions and even sharing in the exit about 5 years down the line, then please join us. This used to just be for friends and family, but you could join in now. You could be essentially earning through an expert, which is I, running the investment firm Commonwealth. So if you want to be a part of it and also get access to exclusive events where we go to in-progress construction and I show you how your money is being used actively, and how the renovation was just complete, and how this is going to help change people's lives, how we negotiated an acquisition. So you could be a part of those events throughout the year and also earn passively. So if you want to be a part of that, please click the link below and I'll let you back to your awesome content. Thanks. Hey, man. That's something that people don't talk about too much, like the personal definitions. Like people just go into, I want to become a billionaire, trillionaire. That's my measurement. And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah, I think too, like I said earlier in this podcast, I love obviously going in the mountains. We were kind of talking before the podcast. I just got back from Sequoia National Park and I was backpacking and camping. I like doing that stuff for a lot of reasons, but one of them is it helps me realize like what I truly need to be happy, like the bare minimum that I need. And obviously being a millionaire or a billionaire is great. Everyone wants to achieve that. But at the end of the day, like if your lifestyle just keeps creeping up as you make more money, you're just going to have more stress, more things to stress about. So I think just keeping in sight of the very basic stuff that you need to be happy and be winning in life is really important for you, just your psychology too, and your mental health.
Yeah. What you just mentioned about the constant increase made me think of I'm gonna call it the Cheetos paradigm. Basically, when I go to the movies every Friday night with my wife, I've started to add hot Cheetos, and then the next week I put like the jalapeno chips.
Right.
I'm like, I want to increase the intensity of the popcorn.
Yeah. That actually sounds like a really good move, by the way. I think I might steal that.
Yeah.
One of my moves is to do a combo with Reese's Pieces and popcorn. So you throw a piece of Reese's Pieces in there with a handful of popcorn, and that chocolate really sets it off.
Yeah,
it's a little pro tip for everybody listening out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the lifestyle creep, I saw it happening to myself where I started to get a little bit more money from real estate and, got a nicer apartment, was spending more money on trips and stuff. And I've seen so many people around me that just get nicer and nicer cars, nicer and nicer apartments. But I was realizing what it was doing to me is just reintroducing that stress of, oh man, I need to go make even more money now in order to have enough reserves and be comfortable and not think about money. And so I actually pulled back. I actually sold my car. I don't have a car right now. I Uber anytime I need to travel somewhere. But I really I essentially cut back and got back to being frugal to try and just like eliminate that level of stress that was coming back in my life. Because at the end of the day, I just want to be stress free.
Yeah. That is the main reason we both left our jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot there. We could expand on that for a while.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If I had to break it down to 3 things that are important to me, is working 4 or 5 hours a day, being able to come back to my wife and hang out every evening on time, and being able to travel once a quarter. So for those listening, break your habits into, simple routines like that instead of, I want to be a billionaire, trillionaire forever and ever. And that'll be like, it'll drive you to meaningful, actual fulfillment of what those routines mean to you. And yeah.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more, man.
Yeah. So speaking of winning, it ties directly into enjoying. How do you enjoy all the wealth you've brought yourself and your family?
Really simple stuff. The way I enjoy it is the biggest enjoyment I get is not having to worry about money. If I don't have to worry about like, oh man, I'm stressed because I don't have enough money in the bank or reserves, or I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to cover my payments or afford a vacation, that right there is winning for me because I've spent the majority of my life always worrying about that stuff. But the way I enjoy my time and my money now is traveling. I mean, at the end of the day, like that's what I did this for. It was to not worry about money and being able to continuously travel. I love traveling the world and going to other countries. And most of all, I like going to national parks and nature and getting outside, unplugging so I don't have to answer emails, text messages, things like that. And to be able to do that with my friends, that for me is enjoying life. Because at the end of the day, I think that's what we all should be doing. We all should be seeing as much of the world as possible instead of sitting inside playing Call of Duty or watching Netflix all the time. So I love, like, I just got back from that trip up in the mountains and I absolutely love it. Like that is enjoying life to the absolute maximum for me.
Yeah, when I go in nature, I'm able to also understand and see and even communicate with God better.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of epiphanies do you like? Maybe if you want to share one epiphany you've had recently when out in nature.
Just how I kind of alluded to it earlier as far as how little you need to really be
Yeah.
happy. Like when I'm up there, right? I don't need a fancy car. I'm not even going up there with it. I don't need, bigger and better TVs, bigger and better apartments and things like that. I don't need anything to impress other people. I can go up there with just my camping gear that I bought years ago and just get closer to the beauty of the world. I mean, I was looking at the Milky Way at night with like a new moon, so dark skies, could see the Milky Way, even got some great photos of it. I'm sitting next to a lake with the wind blowing and no noise, no car noise. Just sitting there. The time was moving slower because I wasn't stressed with all these different things to do. I would literally look at the time and be like, wow, it's only freaking 4 p.m. I can't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So, the epiphanies I have are just like, dude, this is, if you can just have enough money to do this kind of stuff and enjoy time with family and friends when you're at home, that's all you need. You don't need to keep spending money on nicer and nicer things to impress people.
Yeah.
So going up into nature just reminds me of that. And that's one of the reasons why I like to do it so much.
That's awesome. So you would have done great as a caveman.
I would have done great as a caveman or a hunter-gatherer. I mean, that's basically what I'm doing up there.
Foraging about.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've reached our last section, reserve. So there's lots of different aspects of reserve, just financial, naturally, as emotional, spiritual, etc. What is the most important reserve you have in your life?
What do you mean by that? As far as what do I reserve to myself, like in life?
Yeah, like if you could think of like when it ties to emotions, it could be if I anticipate somebody being toxic, I'm gonna have a boundary around them as fast as possible.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What?
So I think my reserve for me is I kind of draw a line with how much I let other people affect my mental health and my security and things like that, because lots of people, like good and bad, will constantly try and even like I've seen like toxicity in entrepreneurship, where if you're not constantly hustling, if you're not constantly networking and growing, then you're not a great entrepreneur. Or if if you're not constantly like outdoing everybody else around you with the nicer car and this and that, I reserve myself and distance myself from all of that kind of stuff. And again, that ties into all of the stuff I do getting back into nature. I just draw the line on, this is what I'm happy with doing. This is what I need to focus on. And I'm not going to let other people change my perception, change my perspective of what makes me happy. And I just draw a line in the sand there. So I no longer care what other people think about me, as either as an entrepreneur or as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. You know what? I just realized we didn't even talk about. You also have a reserve over your time, because you had worked Thursday to Monday in your air traffic control.
Yeah, so I worked Thursday. Yeah, I worked Thursday to Monday. My days off were Tuesday, Wednesday. I would in air traffic control. I would go in Thursday evening 2 to 10 p.m. Then Friday I would work 1 to 9 p.m. and then I'd be back at work Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. So I couldn't do anything Friday nights. Get off work, and then Sunday I'm back at work at 5:30 a.m. So I couldn't really stay out late on a Saturday. And then Sunday night, so I'd work 5:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. on Sunday mornings. And then I'd go back to work at 10 p.m. on Sunday and work the graveyard shift until 6 a.m.
Oh my goodness.
And so my time was completely consumed by that job. And oftentimes I'd have to work 6-day work weeks and work mandatory overtime on either Tuesday or Wednesday. So now I've done the opposite, and I've reserved my time for myself. It's very strict. My weekends are all mine now, and my days are extremely structured so that I don't let work consume my time anymore.
Yeah. And people that try to interrupt that, you just backhand them.
That's right. I don't put up with it, man.
Homie, don't play that.
Mm-mm.
So, okay, what about when it comes to as an investor, how would you advise, especially a beginner intermediate, to have a financial reserve?
Ooh, I would, if you're a beginner or intermediate, as far as financial reserves, the total cost of your, renovations, construction, whatever, I'd put an extra 30% on top. Now, you'll hear a lot of people say 20%, and that is good for people that have a little more experience and have their numbers dialed in to the penny a little bit more than you. But if you're new, you need even more contingency capital, because one of the biggest mistakes I see investors making all the time is not having enough money and running out of money. And if you run out of money, your deal is dead. Like, that's the biggest thing that could happen to you that could ruin your deal. So I would say have a ton of extra money. In Understand that, yes, that will drown out the returns a little bit, because it's a moving scale, right? The less reserves you have, the juicier the deal looks, because you're putting less money into it. And then the more money you put into it, it waters down the returns a little bit more, meaning your return on investment might be less. But for me, I think that security, especially starting out, is more important, because the last thing you want is to lose a deal. And in today's day and age, it's getting harder and harder with the competition and with the pricing. So I think when it comes to like reserves and money wise, make sure you're fat on that. Like, you want to be well capitalized, especially moving forward.
That's a good point. And it's so easy to get emotionally involved because of the limited deals and the
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't have a whole marketing pipeline like you and I, I'm sure we do, of off-market deals and stuff like that, it could be quite stressful. Like, I want to just close something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm dying for a deal right now, and I'm doing everything I can, mailers, you name it. But it's we're just in one of those periods where it's not going to be so easy.
Yeah, and real estate's cyclical. It's just a matter of time before
Exactly.
you find something. Um, how would you feel about somebody that asks the question, um, what if I don't have the 30%, but I could come up with it because I have a job over time in the first few months or something? Would that be a awkward position?
I think you just got to be really careful, because what that reminds me of is something that a lot of newer investors do, where they say, I don't have all of the money necessary to complete the business plan, but I'm going to use some of the cash flow the property is producing to finish the renovations or to help fund them. And while that's possible, that's dangerous. You're introducing some risk, because if things don't go the way you think, or your occupancy isn't as high as you anticipated, there's a lot of moving parts that cannot go your way. And if a couple of those don't go your way, you'll find yourself running out of money really quickly. I would say if you're a newer investor, like if you're a more experienced investor that like really has your operations down and your expenses down really well, you can get away with that. I think that if you're a newer investor, you need to be very careful. And I would recommend you try and find the money instead and bring in a partner to fill that gap. Going into a deal without, if just know that if you do that, you're bringing in more risk. It's possible. I wouldn't say never do that, but know that you're putting yourself at risk of running out of money. I've been there before. You don't want to be there. I would recommend just somehow finding that money from a partner or something.
Yeah, there's a kind of a little tie-in into that. There was a vacancy that came available at the latest multifamily we got, and I went ahead and decided, let's just renovate this entire thing. But in retrospect, it was absolutely not necessary. So, especially if you're a beginner, keep that in mind. Like, if you could just put a little bit of lipstick on a pig and it's functional, and even if you don't get the maximum rents and just keep the cash flow moving, like, that's okay, because it
Absolutely.
reduces your risk. Yeah.
I've done the same thing and come to the same conclusion. Like, especially when you're new, right? You want to be proud of your renovation. You want to be proud of that property that you just purchased and are trying to do the value add. So you're more likely to over renovate that property because you're kind of emotionally attached to it. Like you want it to look good. And I've done the same thing. And you'll notice that a lot of the best do, at the end of the day, replicate what better investors than you are doing. And a lot of experienced investors will tell you the same thing that Ivan just told you, that you just need to do oftentimes the bare minimum to get the increase in rent you're looking for. And oftentimes, like, you can go above and beyond and do all of these cool things, and it's going to be a waste of time for you.
Yeah.
So you can even do it like piecemeal. You can do, a lot of operators will do like an R renovation 1, renovation 2. So renovation 1, you can go in, do some light renovations and test it, see how much the market is willing to pay. And if you're not satisfied, or you could do that, and then with another unit or two, you can do some higher renovations and test and say, okay, I did all these extra renovations over here. I put new hardware on the cabinets and did this flooring instead. It really didn't. The market really wasn't willing to pay that much more. So I'm not going to do that for the rest of these units. I'm just going to stick with that more basic renovation.
Yeah.
So I would say you can always test it if you have enough units.
Yeah. Speaking of testing, I'm thinking about the next multifamily we acquire, just putting out a straight up survey to all the tenants. Like, hey, what's important to you? Because I could say that we got to demolish the entire bathroom, and that's not important to them at all.
Yeah, and a lot of I've seen a lot of operators also offer certain upgrades to tenants that they can choose. So for example, you could say like, hey, your lease is coming up for renewal. Rent's going to go up, $25, $50 or something like that. And you can also select a renovation package that might be, for example, all new light fixtures, all new hardware, and a painting of the cabinets. Things that are easy for you to get somebody in there to do while they're living in it, but you can offer them a couple different packages and they might select one. And as tenants are selecting that could give you an idea. But at the same time, like, sometimes tenants love to be able to select what you're going to improve whenever you're going to increase rent on them. So there's a lot of ways to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And like you just said, we can negotiate that. Like, I remember duplex we got last year, spent like $7,000 on both units. And so like this year, the tenant was asking for replacement of the stove. And I said, since we spent a good amount of money stabilizing this last year, we don't quite have budget for appliances and stuff. Mm-hmm. But if I increase the rent by $40, I could go ahead and replace it. Mm-hmm. If not, it'll be a couple months down the line. And she agreed, just $40 raise. My risk is offset by that.
Perfect. See, that's exactly that's exactly one of the ways that you can get that kind of stuff done. And then the tenants are also a little bit happier because that's what they wanted, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of you replacing, what if you would have replaced the ceiling fans? She might have been like, I don't care about the ceiling fans. I want a damn stove.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't give no crap about the ceiling fan.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, that wraps up the reserve section. Any other tips you wanted to share before we start concluding, brother?
No, there's nothing that comes off the top of my head, but yeah, I'm ready to move on if you are.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Shawn, how could people get in touch with you? And I'm guessing you're still raising for your syndications too?
Oh yeah, we don't currently have a deal that we're raising money for, but if anybody's interested in learning more about what we're doing, and kind of following along, you can always go to investorshawn.com. I spell my name SHAWN. If you go to investorshawn.com and scroll to the bottom, you can download my ebook for free, which explains that whole bonus ADU construction strategy that we're doing here in San Diego. So you can learn about that, see if that's something that interests you. And then the other way to get in touch with me would be to follow me on Instagram, which is Shawn, SHAWN _DiMartile, which is DIMARTILE. And you could follow along my journey. You can DM me there, get a hold of me however you want. It's easy.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Shawn. We'll put all those details in the show notes too. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you so much, Ivan. That was a good time.
Yeah. And thanks for watching another episode of From Tech Developer to Real Estate Developer.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of From Tech Developer to Real Estate Developer. I hope you got a lot of return on investment for your time today, and I encourage you to share it with other people so that they could also get returns, get this valuable education to invest in real estate. We're also sharing this free education because we want to help people learn how to invest so that they could also create more affordable housing units. We have a great goal of creating 2.5 million affordable housing units by 2047, and free education like this is a big part of that. So by you sharing, you are a part of the equation to create those affordable housing units. So I can't wait to see the end of the road that we're going to achieve together. Have an amazing and blessed day.